All right, and we are back. We are back. We have our very first guest, and Kevin Seafried. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Kevin?
Yes, that is it,
Excellent,
Seafried.
excellent. Kevin Seafried is a Washington D.C. comedian who has an amazing story that you're about to hear. All of us remember where we were when the U.S. Capitol was attacked on January 6th. Sadly, for a lot of Americans, this was a moment of excitement and happiness. But for the rest of us non seditionists, we were appalled and cut to the core. This is a very sad moment. Our show, Trouble for Good, as we've mentioned, was particularly affected because it cut against everything that John Lewis believed in: the power of faith, respect for all people, and nonviolence. But just when we didn't think it could get any worse, remember that moment, January 6th, just when you think it couldn't get any worse than just this appalling vision of people attacking our U.S. Capitol, the citadel of democracy. As much as we like to make fun of it, and we will continue to make fun of it, I'm sure Kevin has made fun of our democratic processes at times. As much as we make fun of that citadel of democracy, it is very important that we respect it. And at that moment, when we think it couldn't get any worse, through our YouTubes, through our Instagrams, through our Twitter accounts online, we start seeing pictures of the guy, incredible picture of this guy who'd become known as Confederate Flag Guy. A photographer named Saul Loeb captured an image of this man carrying a large Confederate battle flag inside the U.S. Capitol. It's often been pointing out since then that the Confederate battle flag originated during the Civil War, and yet it never entered the U.S. Capitol during the entire U.S. Civil War. It's also ironic that behind the photo of this Confederate flag guy, two portraits reflect the fractured nation of the country during the 1860s. To the man's right is a guy named Charles Sumner. He was an abolitionist. And the other side, John Calhoun, defender of slavery. So remember that photo. And here's the punchline. Here's the punchline. As people are hanging Mike Pence and carrying zip ties, the reason this show is called Help, My Name Was Hijacked by a Domestic Terrorist, because our guest today, Kevin Seafried, happens to share the same last name as that Confederate flag guy. And I'm sorry for that long intro, but I just think. So, Kevin, let's go back to you. Tell us about yourself. Where are you from? And how did you get into comedy? And then we'll talk about the moment you heard about this moment.
Right. I do want to just point out I have the same last name and the same first name. So it's a full-on.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, Kevin Seafried is not a common name. Go ahead.
Right. So that's my name, though.
You're not ashamed of it.
I'm not ashamed of it. He can change his. And
right.
I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. I grew up there. Currently a DC-based comic. Been doing stand-up for about 9 years, 8 if you don't count the last year of just sitting at home.
Okay. Colorado, a purple state, which is interesting, but now you're here in DC. All right.
Yes. Now I'm here in DC, which is, as blue as it gets. And I bounced around a little bit. I've been in Boston and New York, lived in California for a couple of years, and, kind of just settled down here and made this home.
How did you get into comedy? What drew you to comedy?
Sure. I just watched a lot of it when I was kind of in high school and that age. And what I really liked about stand-up was it was an opportunity to talk without anyone talking back, which I'm from a family of 5 kids, so that never happened. I was kind of like given the kibosh on any time I tried to have a monologue. So
they probably give you like free food and like bar food too. So, when you're in a family of 5 and you're scrambling for that last portion and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's, I think it is a very cool art form, and I don't like using the word art just because it's hoity-toity or what have you, but it's a cool discipline because you get a chance to talk about whatever you want to talk about. and to be whoever you want to be. No matter who you are, there are stand-up comics who are single moms, mothers of 5 that have, a healthy marriage of 70 years. You have, college kids. You've got, dirty old men. You've got people in their 20s who are far left-wing. You've got, MMA fighters. You've got the whole scope of people. And stand-up is just a chance to go up there and explain your world to folks.
It is the ability to be a human being and make other human beings laugh. Now tell us where you were and that moment when the Capitol was being attacked, and then tell us when you found out that this guy had your last name.
Right. The thing that's upsetting to me is that I was still in bed because that's where my life is at right now. So that was probably 10, 11 in the morning. I'm still just lying down.
We're not judging, Kevin.
I feel like of the two Kevins, I had a better day.
This is a safe space, Kevin. Tell us about your feelings.
Right. So I'm sitting on I just, looked at my phone and sitting there looking at it. And I got a couple of kind of strange tweets that were like, oh, like you're about to be in for it, or like, watch out. A lot of mean tweets are going to be coming your way. And
you didn't even know about the Capitol riots at that point?
Oh, I mean, I knew about the riots from the week before, but this must have been a week after.
I'm sorry. Okay, forget about tell us about the Kevin Seafried name moment. Go ahead.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it. We'll skip over that. Everybody had that moment. You had that moment. It hit you to the core. Now you're telling us about the time when you learn about the name.
Right.
All right, you get the tweets.
So I'm seeing those and I don't know what they're about. I'm like starting to get anxious. Like, what happened? Did I have a tweet that was not good? Is a stand-up clip. Did I make a mistake? And
some former girlfriend has come out, or
right. And then all of a sudden, somebody tweeted the picture of the guy, and I had tweeted earlier that week the picture of him holding it up. And I said, well, I guess their heritage is based on treason, was my cute little tweet about it. God. And somebody retweeted that with, imagine being named Kevin Seafried and tweeting this the week before. And so that's when I figured out what was going on.
I'm laughing here, but I'm feeling that moment. Go ahead. This incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I was kind of laughing about it. I felt a need to kind of immediately jump on line and write a joke or two about it. And
oh my God. All right, so let's go to the clip that you posted afterwards that we're gonna watch or listen to if you're on podcast, and it'll be on the YouTube too. Just the clip that you posted right afterwards where you talk about the Confederate flag, and let's hear that now.
Hey, you guys ever realize how the more someone tells you how much they love the American flag, like the more convinced you are they own a Confederate one? It's sort of like you're a guy, all he does is tell you how much he loves his wife. It's like, buddy, we get it. You cheated. We understand.
So when did you record that video? And so it was before, obviously, January 6th. When did you record that?
I think that video specifically is from February of 2019, but I wrote that joke it must have been 2017 or 2018.
Aren't you glad you had a video that showed that you do not like Confederate flags, right?
Yeah, it was, I mean, how often do you have somebody commit treason while holding something you have a joke about? So it kind of lent itself very easily to that.
What you said in the clip is really true. It's really, how can people not see the irony of, and you see this all the time, people who are waving the Confederate flag next to the U.S. flag, and then they talk about history, defending history. They do not get history. This is the whole point. One of the points of the Confederate flag is just an utter lack of understanding about history.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, my dad raised me as a New York Jets fan, so I know what it's like to root for a team that never wins. And
the last cause of the New York Jets. I love it.
Exactly. Yes. And I'm ashamed of that, so I don't fly a Jets flag out my window. You know what I mean? It's this big mistake from my past. And I think that's, to me, what's tough is we know what the South represented, and we know what the North represented, and they were rivals.
Right.
And it just seems very strange to me that you can consider yourself a patriot while pledging allegiance in some way to a direct competitor of, or, you know,
a violent attack on our union.
Yeah.
All right. So you had an interview with the Washington Post, and during that interview, they mentioned it was about you and other people. They talked about a guy named Jeffrey Epstein, who shared the name of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein is a common name, but your name is not common. So it just must have just, how has this affected you? Tell us the pros and the cons.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like people have asked me this a bunch, and when it comes down to it, I know this isn't the interesting angle, but it's just not that big a deal. You know, good. I got a bunch of new Twitter followers that day. Kristen Bell liked something I tweeted. That's all I've ever wanted. And people saw my stand-up. That was great. I had a few people get mad because they didn't read before posting, you know, and they said, "Oh, you're a jerk." And I said, "Oh, actually, I'm a different guy." And they were like, "Oh, sorry." It wasn't that big a deal. Like, right. It's very strange to me because I think people have picked up on the story. You know, the Washington Post, you know, called, and I did that story, and I read it, and I heard about these other folks, and I feel bad for their businesses and whatnot. But
I think the Jeffrey Epstein thing must be awful. Oh my God.
Oh, it has to be the worst. But I feel like, you know, it's pretty easy to just say, "Oh, I'm actually a different person." Most people get it,
right?
You know, and.
Well, I hope it, you know, I'm glad, I hope it actually brings attention to your comedy, because I've listened to your stuff, and it is, you know, it's good stuff. Now,
well, thank you.
Now that we've complimented you on every show, of Trouble for Good, we like to have some disagreeing agreeably. And when we were talking about this show, you made some comments about Thomas Jefferson that I would like to discuss with you. Tell us what you think the American view of Thomas Jefferson should be in our history.
So the reason I think I brought it up there, right, is I have a joke about Thomas Jefferson that's, you guys can check it out online. If you just Google my name, it's beneath all the Confederate flags. But the joke is basically about, you know, there's two things at hand. One is about historical revisionism and the way that people get so angry about the concept of that. Right. And my response to it is, I don't think that's what's happening anymore. I think what we're doing is telling stories that weren't previously shared without deleting stories that have been. So when we talk about somebody like Jefferson, he did some incredible things, right? There were great things that he did. He also enslaved a lot of people. And, you know, the main thing that I usually bring up is Sally Hemings, right? Who was, interesting tidbit, the half-sister of his deceased wife, Martha. And my girlfriend is like big into history, and apparently she looked like almost exactly like his deceased wife. So a lot of people think that's where the attraction stemmed from. But at age 14, she was tasked with taking his daughter, Martha, same name as his wife, to France. And it's alleged that that is when their physical relationship began.
When she was 14 years old.
14 years old. And remember, he's 30 years her senior.
Correct.
Right? So he was...
somewhat of a power advantage, you might suggest.
Right. You could also say that, you know, she was an enslaved person who didn't really have the right to say no. That wasn't available, and had never known anything else, wasn't able to go anywhere. And at this point in time is in France, where, you know, she probably doesn't speak the language. So all of these factors create this very difficult environment. And for me, I think the easiest way to look at this is, let's talk about Epstein, who you mentioned earlier, right?
Right.
Have you seen the documentary about all the horrible things he did?
Yeah.
So the beginning of that documentary, it's all about how he would bring young women over to his house who are underage and essentially pay them to give him inappropriate massages. Right. And then they could leave and go to their families' homes or what have you, and they were paid for services, and that is a crime, and it's disgusting and despicable. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
To underage prostitution? So now this is a situation where we've got a girl who's younger than that, who doesn't have another home to go to, and who is completely at the whim of her master or owner in this situation, right?
Correct.
And has no choice, no ability to consent in any way here. And so when we talk about Thomas Jefferson, I'm fine mentioning all of the things that he's done. And I think that's important. But his story includes that storyline.
I understand, and I certainly agree we should be telling the stories of the Sally Hemings, and I think that movement has been happening. I guess my bottom line is this. Do you think, on balance, Thomas Jefferson should be honored in America, and does he belong on Mount Rushmore? Yes? Now, you have to do yes or no.
So before I answer it, mostly I think Mount Rushmore is one of the silliest wastes of money.
I love Mount Rushmore. Four of my favorite Americans are up there, but anyway.
I think
another slaveholder too.
Right. I think when it comes to this word of like, should we honor someone? It creates a really silly, what's the word? Dual option situation, right? It's either they're good or they're bad. People aren't good or bad. They're people. And everyone in the world has done some good things and some bad, and some outweigh the negatives, with their positives, and their positives outweigh the negatives, whatever. And I don't think that we should be talking about deifying anyone, honoring or not honoring anyone. I think we should be just accepting who they were and educating people about the truths of what that person is, and I don't think it means that we can't focus on the good things they did, but I think to ignore the upsetting things or the crimes is kind of a shame for the folks who were affected by those crimes. And it paints an incomplete history that we are really reckoning with now, right? This idea that there's a lot of stuff that we have not been taught about because of the stories that are chosen to be told.
Correct.
And so that's really what comes down to for me.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I think we probably agree in a lot of ways. I am a big fan of Thomas Jefferson because of, the founding documents primarily, which I think were so brilliant and have helped our country, which unfortunately the folks that barged in on January 6th were kind of intent on undermining. I want to talk. We want to close soon, very soon, with talking about where you're going to be performing, how people can reach you, how can find about your comedy. One last question: what role do you think in Trouble for Good? We're trying to bring people together to could have good discussions and to agree to disagree, like you and I have kind of disagreed on Thomas Jefferson a little bit. Because we love the dude. He was a righteous dude. But anyway, where do you think comedy can be do you have any hope that comedy can be a factor or a tool for creating safe spaces for people just agreeing to disagree and share their disagreements without hating each other? Have you seen that in practice? And do you think that comedy can have that role in our nation as we go forward? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Two thoughts. One is that what I love about stand-up is you get to get on stage and no one can interrupt you, and you can explain what you think and why. And if the audience disagrees with you, they can disagree with you by just in their mind not disagreeing, but not agreeing, but they have to listen and take it in. And if you have views that are offensive or that people don't like, they'll stop coming out to your shows. They won't support you. And I also like that sometimes someone will get on stage and say something I disagree with, and I'll laugh at it because I understand the logic behind their joke. I understand the system that their brain operates in because they've expressed it eloquently in that way.
Yep.
One of the things that I think about stand-up is I don't think that comedy is necessarily a tool for bridging gaps or for creating a safe space, but I think it's a tool for helping us to communicate and expose our own logic and irony and hypocrisy. And I think that's really where it comes in handy. The most important thing, I know you talk a lot about respecting people's opinions, and I am not actually as fond of this idea that you have to inherently respect everyone's opinion. I do believe that you have to attempt to understand it and where it comes from, right? Like if you were to look at someone, just to go to the most extreme, so there's no like political discussion on it. You look at Hitler, right? That's the worst. That's our worst guy that we talk about, right? It's pretty hard to defend.
He's sort of on the extreme level of
Right.
opinion. You don't want to respect his opinion. Yep.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, how can anybody respect his opinion? I don't think you have to respect it.
Yep.
But I do think there's value in understanding, why did he think that? How did he get other people to think that? Why did that thought process continue so much that it was able to, lead to the deaths of millions? And if we can get into what the beliefs were at the core of that, what the fundamental, foundations of that were, we can start to argue against it. And when you find that stuff at the base of those beliefs and figure out where you are starting to get, misaligned with other folks in terms of the way you're thinking about stuff, then you can actually have those conversations. But if you're just looking at the end result and respecting other people's end result, you don't make any progress.
Right. And I maybe I didn't express myself well, but I actually don't believe in respecting and like giving air to all people's opinions. I'd like to distinguish between the people and their opinions, just kind of like, on our show, we don't talk, we try to avoid labeling people as racists, but we talk about policies being racist if they directly advance racism or they don't undermine the existing racism, because something's racist if you're just saying, hey, I don't care, I'm not involved. That's kind of a racist policy, because we actually have a problem in racism. Everybody should be on board with. Listen, Kevin, this was fantastic. One of our first interviews, and hopefully we didn't botch it too badly. This was fantastic. Tell us where you are going to be doing your comedy. How can people find out about you, and how can we support your comedy?
Sure. So, unfortunately, I'm not doing too many live shows right now, given the state of the world. But I do have a website. It's kevinseafried.com. You can go there if you want to find my stand-up.
SeeFried.com.
Exactly. And
you don't have that Confederate flag guy anywhere on there, right?
No, I don't.
Good.
He messaged me about a partnership, but I said no. And and then I also am on Twitter at KSeafried, at KSeefried.
All right.
And yeah, those are the best places to see me.
If we're not already following you, I'm going to, right after we get off this call, I'm going to follow you and share your humor with the world, sir, because you're a funny man. And
awesome. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys having me on. And I'm glad you're doing a podcast talking about, the issues that are important right now.
Well, God bless you, sir. Well, I just, rookie mistake, banged in the microphone. Sorry. Anyway, you're a good man, sir. Thank you for coming on our podcast, and thank you for joining Trouble for Good. And go out there and create some good trouble, sir.
All right. Thanks.
God bless.